Hey there, Wargamers, Justin here on Paint here, and today, boom, we're going to get some more work in on our Gamma Galaxy Clan Wolf Timberwolf. I'd like to welcome you guys back to the channel. Thank you for tuning in today. If you are new here, please alpha strike that like and subscribe button. And if you're a returning viewer, I appreciate you being here to help support what I do. Thanks for having my back. Appreciate you having my six. Thanks for being an awesome lance mate, star mate, whatever the case may be for you. Appreciate you being here to help support what I do. That said, today we're going to get into some more hobby progress on our Timberwolf here and try and kind of finish him up. The next step is going to be doing some basing, and we're going to do something a little simple on this particular project. And for that, we're going to be using some texture paste from Pro Acrylic. I think this might be the first time using this one. Yeah, it's not even open yet, so we've got this. And one of the other things you might use with this would be some basing material from Battletech Designs. Now, I'm not going to be using this today. These are some bits I pilfered from work because I get a little perk because I work there. But these are from our traffic control greebles pack, I believe. So we got jersey barriers, we have broken ones, non-broken ones, and we have cones. You could use these to spice up the basing we're going to do today. I am not, but you could. If you were to use these, I would highly recommend using or spraying them on the sprue. Spray them white. Use your contrast paint or whatever you might be using, dry brush, and then pull them off because all the supports are on the bottom. This is a really easy way to paint them on here and not have to worry about stressing too much over that because it's really easy. So for today, we're going to be working on doing kind of a road for our guy, like something that might look like a city fight. So we'll grab the texture paste, and one of the things, whoops, that was really great. Awesome. So as I was saying before I dropped that, one of the things I like to do when I get my texture paste, and it's a new one, I like to make sure I don't waste what's on the top because there was a lot of goop that was on there. So get that back in your jar and don't waste it. Now, one of the things I have happened with similar products to this in the past is once you open it and start using it, it will start to dry out even when it's closed. So I generally try and do this as all in one go for projects if I can. If you can't, it is what it is. Now that my opinion may differ over time because this is the Monument Hobbies version of it. The stuff I had from, oh god, was it Huge Minis? I think it's Huge Minis. The stuff I had from them dried up pretty quickly, unfortunately. And I only used it like one time, closed it, came back later, and it was gone. So anyways, for this particular guy, we've got a paintbrush here, just a grungy one we're happy to destroy, and we're going to find an area here we kind of want to plan out to be our road. So what I generally try to do with this stuff is to use it for its texture, and I like to use it to build up some height. So we're going to kind of cover the base here and try and get thin coverage. This part is relatively easy. Don't got to stress too much. Just try not to hit your little bro's feet. And get you a nice coat on here. Now as we come around to the front of his feet, I like to try and get this very thin if I can. So I want the texture, but I don't want this to be hugely built up. So try the best I can not to hit his feet. And we want this to be a thin coat of the texture. Because if you look at like asphalt on a road, it's not perfectly smooth. It's kind of got a coarse texture to it. So we're planning on preparing this to be kind of a street or a road. And we want that little bit of a texture. There we go. Clean up the edge there. And we're going to come right around his little foot there. And try and thin that out. It's a little bit awkward because he's got that peg. If you're worried about that, you could paint it black. But I think once everything's down, you're barely going to see it. But as with all things, you can always do more or do less. So with that first application now, oh, on this little spot here, foot. So that first application down, we're going to let that dry, and then I'm going to come in on this backside and kind of layer up and make it thicker and taller and try and get it flat to kind of give the idea or the illusion of a curb. So before we can get to that though, let's tidy up this area right here I missed next to his foot, and we will let this bad boy dry. And with our first layer of paste now dry, we're going to come back in and we're going to focus on the back area here where we're going to kind of create our like sidewalk or upraised platform. So we want to have a little depth or separation between that and our actual like asphalt road. So I'm going to come back here and just kind of try and thicken this up. We're going for height here, but we also want the top to be a little smooth, so do the best you can here. And when it starts to dry out a little bit, you can take something that's like low tack, like maybe a card sleeve or some type of plastic wrapper or something, and you can kind of press down on the top of this to flatten it out a little bit. And that's a trick that I got from Austin at Death Ray Designs, my boss man. I've watched him do that on some projects, and it works pretty good. He does it a lot better than I do because I'm a little impatient, and I don't often get it at the right curing point in the curing process for the paste. He's got that a little bit more dialed in than I do, but it is something you can do. And once we get this application on, we'll probably give that a whirl and see if we can't get that to work for us. I think we're in a pretty good spot for having a nice little pasty paste here that's built up. All right. We'll probably have some a little bit of cleanup to do here, but not the end of the world. All right, so nice and raised up. You can see the depth there. All right, so I'm coming in here and kind of just try and clean up the edge just a smidge. Just a smidge. Okay. Now give that a moment to dry. I'm not going to let it fully dry. We're going to let it partially dry. And then we'll come in with something that's low tack and see if we can't press down and get a flat line across the top. All right, so I've hit this with a little bit of a hair dryer to speed up the process, and we've got our handy dandy business card for Fortress Miniatures and Games, and it's got a little slick surface to it. So if you're looking to pick up anything from Battletech on your hobby needs, check them out. That said, we're going to use this because it's slick and it's flat, and we're going to come in here and we're going to put it onto our build-up here and just kind of gently press down. And we'll kind of come over here and press there if we can. Probably could have cut this business card for this part. Might have made life a little easier. There's probably also some sculpting tools you can use, but when you're hobbying, I feel like you often use what you've got right on hand. So I'm liking that pretty good. Let's give it a little more flat push over there. And boop. Oops, let's use the slick side here, huh? We built up for that. Okay. And we've got what looks like kind of a little bit of a cracking going on here, which isn't bad because concrete cracks. But what I am going to do is use the edge here. I'm going to try and put a little bit of, actually that is, I'm going to tear it. Sorry, Bobby. That was a little too tall. We're going to use this to come in here and kind of put a little bit of, a little bit of lines in here to give us a little bit of kind of a separation in our concrete, so to speak. Oh, it's tearing a little bit. It's tearing on us. That's okay. That's okay. Press down. Alright. Come over here and do the same thing. This might have worked a little better with an X-Acto blade, but we're using what we got on hand. I have an X-Acto blade near me. I just wanted to use this because it's also good for flattening out the tops. Alright, so I think we're going to get an interesting kind of broken concrete texture here. Got little lines in it, so it looks like there's some separation. And maybe we'll do like a little one right there too. So we just get just a little extra something out of that. We don't know exactly where they're fighting or what it is, but it looked like some kind of broken concrete. It's got those little lines in it. So we'll let that dry. And then the remaining steps for, oops, let's flatten that back out. Pushed it. Don't do that. But the remaining steps are pretty straightforward. We're going to color up our concrete, do some lines on here, and start to make it look like he's kind of standing on a road. While our concrete slab is drying, we're going to grab some Black Templar contrast paint, give it a good shake. You can use black paint, or you can use speed paint from Army Painter. This is what I have on hand, so we're going to be using black today. So grab some of this, and what we're going to do is be hitting all the areas in front of our kind of concrete lip that we just created. Not rocket science. This is real easy. We get to this spot, we are almost finished with our mini. Not too shabby. And I recommend, if you're not using a hairdryer, to give your mini some time to dry, or the basing rather, because that concrete stuff can take a little bit. I have hit it with a hairdryer while filming to speed things up, and it's still rather soft. So you don't want to do this while it's super wet, because then you might end up kind of mixing with the basing texture paste, and that's not exactly what you may be wanting to do. So be a little patient with this, and you'll be just fine. This also works really well, especially on the patient's front, when you're doing multiple mix at once, because while one model is drying, you can be working on another one. So it's really nice for patients because you don't have to stress too much, because hopefully, in theory, if you're doing enough, by the time you get to the last one, the first one is dry. Now, getting in here for the back areas of his foot is going to be a little more tricky. Not the easiest area to maneuver our paintbrush. And I'm going to go ahead and black out his peg while we're here. Might as well. Just so we're not getting any latent, like, orange colors popping through. Now it's time to hit this with our hair dryer, let that dry, and see if we can't come in and start detailing up the road. For the next step, we're going to be grabbing our bold titanium white and our yellow ochre. We're going to be doing some lines on our road here to give us the illusion that there's roads, or that it's a road. And for that, the white lines and the yellow lines kind of what make up our traffic, our roads for guidance. So grab a little bit of that white, get it thinned down on our palette here. And while we're at it, I'll go ahead and thin down a little bit of this yellow ochre too, because we're going to use both, and this step hopefully should not take too terribly long. So we're going to come in here and we're going to try as best we can to get the kind of white guideline that is kind of the separation between our concrete here and our road. It's going to be a little difficult because we've got old boy's foot here and it's at a weird angle, so we're going to kind of pull what we can pull from this side, and then we'll rotate as best as possible to get the angles that are going to help us get this line. And if it's not perfect, don't stress. You should be having fun with this. Don't worry. The other beauty of using the contrast paints is if you screw this part up, you can always come back in with your contrast paint and tidy it up, especially with white, because the black is going to give you supreme coverage over the bright white paint. And you can see where that line right here it's a little crooked because it's a rather difficult to get our paintbrush in there where I want it to be. But not the end of the world. We'll just do the best we can, and if I'm not happy when we end, I'll come back in with that black like I mentioned, and we'll try our best to tidy up. Hopefully we won't have to do too much aftercare though. I'm just sticking up this white line, and I think we might be in business. Alright, so not perfect, but good enough considering where his feet are at. So we're going to come in with our yellow ochre and try and do something that looks like the middle line that would be the divider between the two lanes. So let's do something like, maybe kind of like right here. And let's just pull this kind of all the way back. Like I said, if we're not super happy with it, we can always tidy up with a little bit of that black contrast paint. There we go. So we kind of got our yellow divider there, and probably going to need a little bit of tidying up. So we'll give that a quick hair dryer spritz. And we'll come back in with our black Templar and tidy up kind of right next to it. I want this to look a little bit cleaner. again, this is kind of the beauty of working with something that's just going to be going over black. We have the ability to tidy up rather easily. That spot right next to his foot is a little persnickety. Probably should have got that line a little bit further away from his feet, but it's okay. It's okay. And we'll pull this line right here. And this one's a little bit more persnickety because it is in between his toes. And it was not the best line to begin with. And again, these don't have to be perfect. It's also a road. There's cracks in roads and things aren't perfect, so it's okay. But we're going to try our best, as best we can, to at least tidy up what we feel is necessary. But don't get too bogged down in this. Don't let perfection stand in the way of good. Because I find sometimes when you're pursuing perfection, you never actually finish anything, so nothing can ever be perfect. So let's go ahead and close up our black here. And I like the yellow. I think that is cool. It's a nice juxtaposition. But I think the straight white line is a little bit boring. But what do most roads have? So at least in the US, most roads have two types of lines in the middle, like double line or the dash lines. I was kind of thinking maybe we do a little bit of a dash next to it, because perhaps one of these lanes is allowed to turn and the other one isn't, or pass rather, and the other one isn't. So I figured that'll give us a reason to have a little bit of something different on the base. And again, this is another one of those areas, if you mess up, just come back in with that black and you can tidy up your dash marks. Which is probably exactly what we're going to do, because I want to make these look a little bit more squared off. I think coming back in with that contrast paint is going to allow us to do that with a little bit more ease. Okay, so and one of the things you could also do is you could have done two straight yellow lines and then just use the contrast paint to fill in and black out what you wanted to, or where you wanted to make the lines at. That's not what we did, because sometimes I make things difficult. But this step I'm doing here could have easily been done over a straight yellow line, and you just black out the areas you want to cover to make your dashes. And see, we're just kind of tidying up, cleaning it up. And then we'll just and there we go. Not perfect, but cool enough. I also think it'd be really cool to do like an arrow here to signify turning. That could be interesting. Or perhaps you might come in with, again, we've got our jersey barriers and our traffic cones, wherever I set those. Oh, they're right here. These will look really good on this base. And also some of the vehicles from DRD. We've got, whoops, it was open. We've got little Humvees, which are a little big, but we've got these little SUVs and sports cars and things like that, and little Jeeps. That would probably look pretty good on your basing if you wanted to do that. Let's grab a Jeep, because I drive a Jeep, and who doesn't like a Jeep? So if you were to have this guy and have him kind of like mounted here, or if your basing is such that, you know, you have him kind of on the backside back here, or maybe it's up under his foot and he's kind of about to crush it, or maybe it's not to look like it is crushing it. So there's some options for things that are in scale that'll look really good with this. That's it for the next steps. We need this fully dry before we can move on. So I'm going to hit that with a hairdryer, and hopefully it'll speed this up, and then we'll start finishing up the basing. For our next step, we're going to come in and start dry brushing. We're going to grab some neutral gray to dry brush over this black and yellow and white, which is going to tone down the yellow substantially, because it's going to have gray over it. But if you ever look at a road, when we kind of paint a road, air quotes, or draw a road for like art, oftentimes it's just black, yellow, and white. But if you actually look at an asphalt road or paved road, a lot of times that black kind of looks gray and the white and yellow are faded. So I think dry brushing the gray over the top is a nice way to kind of add a little little bit of realistic look to our concrete, or not concrete, our asphalt. In this case, it's a little hard to get all the way in there because of his feet, but we'll do the best we can. And honestly, the areas that are the most accessible are probably the most visible and therefore the most important. See, not too bad. Looks a little bit more like a road now. Now for our actual concrete back here, we're going to grab some bright neutral gray, and we're going to dry brush that as well. And using the same dry brush is fine because it's already got gray in it, and if they mix a little bit, not the end of the world. So mix that up on our paintbrush here, test on the back of our hand as we do, and we'll come in here and try and do some dry brushing. That kind of lightens it up a little bit. And we have got a little spot of white that hit our concrete. So I'm going to come in with just a dab of that neutral gray, and we're just going to specifically target and cover that up. So next up, we're going to give this a moment to dry so we can put a little faint wash over it and hit it one more time with the dry brush so we really kind of pull it all together. For our wash, I've gone ahead and grabbed a little bit of our black contrast contrast black Templar rather, and we're going to mix probably about 6 or 7 drops of water. I went ahead and went with 7 because we've also got the brush loaded here, so that's going to be a little extra. And we don't want this to be super duper dark. We're just going to try and discolor, kind of like a wash. Well, let's test a little bit just to see. All right, that still feels like a little dark for what I want, so put a couple more drops in, and we'll see where we're at. Test again here. Still feels a little bright, or a little dark rather. So we don't want this to super drown out our white and yellow on our base, which is what we're about to cover. So I'm feeling a little bit better about that. So let's give this a little whirl, and we're going to cover the whole base here. We don't want that to pool too much, so kind of get it out there and don't allow it to. We're going for coverage, but we're not trying to quote cover everything. We're just trying to coat everything, so to speak. So we're going to kind of darken it all up a little bit, give ourselves a little bit of depth. This is why we thin this down, so we can like maneuver it and get a very thin, faint coat. It's almost like a filter, so to speak, versus like a wash. Okay. There we go. And we'll come back over here and apply a wash to our concrete. This part I'm not as worried about because it is a little much brighter than our asphalt was, so it getting a little darker is not the end of the world. Okay, so we'll give that a moment to dry. Lots of dry time in today's video. We'll give that a moment to dry. We'll come in with our final dry brush in the ring of the base, and this guy should be nearing completion. And with a little magic from our hair dryer, we've dried this guy up, so we're going to come back in with that neutral gray here and re-hit the concrete, not concrete, asphalt with our dry brush. And we still got a little faint gray here, but we're trying to get a little variation in our color, and I find that that little bit of kind of a wash step helps out. See, we're lightening it up here, dark over here, and I might just grab just the tiniest dab of this bright neutral gray we have as well. Mix that in and just kind of hit the front just a little bit, just to lighten that up. Yeah. So we've got kind of that shadow going on behind them, bright spot here, looks really nice. Now we'll load up some more of that bright neutral gray, and we're going to hit the concrete part here. Oh, it was still a little too soft, so I just mangled it up a little bit, rushing for the video, and I jabbed and messed up the rear of it. Not the end of the world. We'll just keep on chugging along. That texture paste was taking a lot longer to dry than anticipated. Even with all the hair drying I was doing, it still kind of got a little softness internally. That's the downside of having that kind of thick paste going on. The inside dries a lot slower than the outside, so when you do this kind of thing, just be aware of what you're getting into. But I want this to be a little brighter, so we've come back in with some more of that neutral gray, loaded up on a brush. I'm being very gentle here because I'm very aware that the inside is still very soft, so I don't want to apply too much pressure. And there we go. So kind of got our concrete going on here, and we've got our asphalt up front. And I'm liking where that is at. I think that looks really cool. Pretty speedy given what it is we were trying to achieve for kind of a speed paint style tutorial. And the only thing left for us, only two parts left for us to do are to ring the base and varnish the base. So for the ring, let's go ahead and grab some black paint here. And this step is 100% not rocket science. We're going to get our little dribble of water here, mix up our black. This is off camera, but I'm just thinning down our black a little bit. I think you guys understand how that'll work. Now we're going to come here, and I'm gripping the mini in such a way that hopefully I'm not getting paint across the top. And we're just going to gently come in here and just ring our base black. And this is where an area with some Battletech players will put a decal or hazard stripes or something to signify the front facing that they intend for the mech to be. In this case, I believe it's this flat right here. I always have my mech's cockpit dictate the facing because that's the direction the guns are facing. Some people do the direction of the feet. I don't like that because sometimes the feet are facing one way and the torso is facing the other, and then it makes it look like my mech's not looking at the targets it's firing at, so I always go off the cockpit. But if you don't designate on your base, just tell someone at the beginning of the game, if there's any confusion, what you intend your front and rear arcs to be if you've got a mech that is posed such that it's difficult to determine. And I can tell you there are a few, particularly in the Legendary box with Grayson Carlisle, rather, Morgan Kell's Archer, the Natasha Karinsky Direwolf, and Aiden Pride's Mad Cat. That Direwolf and the Marauder from that Grayson Carlisle's Marauder, those are pretty bad for, if I recall, kind of being off kilter to where they're facing. Like they're like in the middle of a hex, so it's a little bit more difficult to determine where the front facing is intended to be. And while this dries, I think I've got that die sheet here. Actually, this one's not too bad. I feel like it would be this facing, but its feet are kind of funky. That's not as bad as actually, I could tell you why that's not as bad. I forgot. I broke this torso and I re-glued it. It was kind of facing here. I totally forgot. I'd already been cleaning on this one, and I broke it and re-glued it, and it was facing this way, but I got it facing that way. Totally forgot I'd already fixed that. Whoopsies, my bad. Here's a pretty good example of a one where it does that. His torso is here, his legs are here, so it's like, is the front of this base meant to be this one? Is it meant to be this one? The hips are kind of here, but his feet kind of look like they're walking here. He's here. It almost feels like this whole thing could have been shifted where this front foot is on that flat, and this one's kind of sitting here, and then he's facing on a flat, but that is not the case. In the case of this little bro, I think it's a bit more obvious where he's at. So with that said, we're going to let this dry, then we'll come in with a varnish and finish up this mech. And for our varnish, I really like using the Ultra Matte from AK Interactive. It is the bee's knees, so to speak, for matte varnishes. It is super matte, and it is my favorite. So we're going to grab some of this here, put some in our little lid. It's probably a good amount right there. And we're going to varnish up the base, seal everything in, and kind of tone down any remnants of shine that still remain. So let's come over here. And this stuff is super duper thin and runny, so be aware of that. And we're just going to get a nice thin coat here. And once this is on and dries, you can usually tell if you missed a spot because it will look considerably different. So might take you a coat or two, but shouldn't be too bad. Come over here and get our concrete. Hit the edge of the base here. Like I said, you can tell this is very, very runny. Very, very thin. Goes really well through an airbrush too. Takes a couple coats usually, but works out pretty nice. So with that applied, it's time to hit it with the hairdryer and then see how we're feeling. And with the varnish now dry, our pretty cool looking Gamma Galaxy Clam Wolf Timberwolf is complete. There are a few things obviously we could have done better on, spending extra time on details on any of it, of course. We also have the basing materials I've mentioned for the third time in this video for Battletech designs. We could use some traffic control greeblies, we could use some vehicles, we could paint the missile tips here, we could do a lot of things, but I think for the purposes of this tutorial, we have gone from start to in its current state here and covered a variety of topics that I think will allow you guys to add tools to your tool chest and allow you to do more or less in the areas that you see fit. In this case, I think this guy looks pretty good. I had a great time painting it. I hope you guys learned something and enjoyed. As always, if you did, please hit that like and subscribe. Hopefully you'll tune in for the next one. And as always, keep painting your models, keep rolling your dice, and I will catch you guys next time.
If you made it this far, you're probably a viewer that already hits that like button when you see a video come up. You're probably already a subscriber, and you probably jump into the comments down below to help support the channel, to help support that algorithm. But if you're looking for some other ways to help support the channel too, make sure you check the description down below. Maybe you want to pick up some paints from Monument Hobbies. That's my paint of choice. The Pro Acrylic line is chef's kiss, good stuff. Maybe you want to check out some of the offerings from Battletech Designs, where I work in my day job. We got plenty of 3D printed products, as well as MDF terrain, some of the stuff that I have designed myself and we play with here on the channel. And if you're looking to bolster your Battletech ranks, miniatures, and offerings, make sure you check out Bobby from Fortress Miniatures and Games. He's one of the main supporters of the channel as well, and supporting any of these companies helps support what I do and helps to ensure that I can continue to bring content to all of you. If you want to become a super supporter, I highly recommend you guys check out the Patreon. You guys give that extra little edge to help push more content out, and I really do appreciate that. And my ultimate goal on the channel is to continue to be able to not only put out the content we have now, but to get to a point where you can put out more content later, whether that be battle reports or painting tutorials or just more rambles, anything at all. I'd like to be doing more content for you. This is something that I enjoy. I like being able to cast a light into the darkness to bring a little bit of hobby positivity to all of you and make you feel good, and also enjoy playing games myself. As we do the final sign off here though, I do want to go ahead and switch on over and do the scroll of awesome to showcase all the Patreon supporters, the super supporters of the channel, to give them some recognition for helping support what I do. Thank you guys so much, and I will catch you guys next time.